Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty fundamental, the state of global higher education. It feels like it's hitting a breaking point, right?
Absolutely. You've got sky-high debt in places like the U.S., but globally, access is still incredibly low. And the models themselves often feel, well, stuck in the past.
Exactly. So our source today is a white paper from EON Reality. They're proposing something called the Intelligent University.
Yeah, powered by their EON or virtual campus. And the claim is pretty bold, shifting education from this massive, often failing cost center into something self-funding, an asset, basically.
That's a huge claim, especially with all the talk about student debt. So our mission in this deep dive is to kind of break that down.
Right. We need to look at the tech behind it, this EON virtual campus thing. Then there's a key metric they use, KTE, knowledge transfer efficiency.
KTE, right. And then the financing model, which sounds different, ImpactShare, specifically this 1-9-20 structure.
Exactly. The idea is it takes the financial risk away from the universities. So we need to see how the tech, the metric, and this finance model supposedly work together.
Okay, let's unpack this. First, just setting the scene. The problem, it's cost, but also just sheer numbers.
Well, yeah, the paper points out U.S. tuition, $30,000, sometimes up to $75,000 a year per student. It's wild.
And yet globally, less than 1 person in 10 gets access to a degree. So it's super expensive and super exclusive.
And that creates another problem. Relevance. You've got the World Economic Forum saying, what, 3 billion people will need reskilling by 2030?
3 billion. That's a staggering number.
It is. And traditional universities, with physical buildings, fixed semesters, static course lists, they just weren't built for that kind of scale or speed.
Which leads to this core issue they identify inefficiency, measured by this KTE metric.
That's the one, knowledge transfer efficiency. Basically, how much of what's taught actually sticks and becomes a usable skill.
And the current score isn't great.
No. Most traditional systems hover around 0.60, which means 40% of the time and money is essentially wasted. It doesn't translate into competence.
40% waste in a $1 trillion sector. That's inefficient, doesn't quite cover it.
It really doesn't. It's why they say education's productivity has actually gone down over the last 50 years. Unique in that way.
Okay, so if that 40% waste is the problem, the solution needs to fix that. It needs to be scalable, deployable quickly, and actually deliver better results.
And that's the pitch for the EON virtual campus. They claim it can be set up as the operating system for one of these intelligent universities in, 30 days.
30 days for a university system overhaul. That sounds ambitious.
It does. But the paper says it's possible because, one, it's cloud-based, and two, the core content comes from an AI engine. So you skip the years-long curriculum design process.
Bypassing the institutional inertia. Okay, so what's in this virtual campus? They mentioned pillars.
Yeah, 5 main components working together. First, the AI course engine. It generates and updates apparently over 9,000 courses.
Constantly updating is key, I guess. And the second?
The XR simulation labs. This is the hands-on part. Over 36 million 3D and AR/VR assets for practical training, learning by doing.
Okay, so that directly targets the KTE problem, the inefficiency, making learning more active, less passive.
Exactly. That's how you push that KTE score up. Then you need to verify it all.
Which brings us to the other pillars.
Right. The integrity suite. Think biometric proctoring, blockchain credentials, making sure the skills are real and trustworthy.
Academic trust, basically. And the last one connects it to the real world.
Yeah, the career compass. It links those verified skills directly to job openings and, crucially, potential income.
So AI content, XR delivery, verified skills, and a path to a job. It's an end-to-end system.
That's the idea. And when you put it all together, that's how they claim to get those much higher KTE scores, 0.85 to 0.90 routinely.
So nearly doubling the efficiency compared to the old 0.60 score.
Pretty much. And that shift is huge.
Yeah.
KTE stops being just an academic score.
It becomes a financial driver, proof of value.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is KTE becomes not just an academic metric, but a financial engine. But like you said, normally this kind of upgrade costs a fortune.
Right. Where does the money come from? Universities aren't usually flush with cash for massive tech overhauls, especially without taking on debt.
And that's the pivot. This is where the ImpactShare model comes in. It's designed to remove that upfront financial barrier entirely.
Okay. Here's where it gets really interesting. ImpactShare. Replacing tuition, replacing debt with shared success. Let's break down the 1-9-20 part.
Okay, so let's use their U.S. example. Average tuition equivalent, say, $50,000.
Yeah.
EON values their virtual campus platform at 10% of that, so $5,000 per student value.
Got it. $5,000 value. How does the 1920 apply to that?
First rule, 1% upfront license fee. The university pays just 1% of that $5,000 value. So in the U.S. example, $50.
Wait, $50? Not $500. I thought the original notes mentioned $500. Let me recheck. Ah, yes, the example used $50,000 tuition, 10% is $5,000, and 1% of $5,000 is indeed $50. My apologies, I misspoke earlier based on a different calculation in my head. Okay, so $50 up front, that's incredibly low.
It is. That's the zero risk entry. For $50, they get the whole platform, AI courses, XR labs, everything.
Okay, so $50 down. What about the other $4,950 of the value?
That's the second rule, 9% EON ImpactShare credit. EON essentially finances that remaining $4,950 itself. But, and this is crucial, it's not a loan.
Not a loan. How does that work?
It's a performance-based credit. The university doesn't owe that $4,950 back unless the program actually works.
Yeah.
Unless it enrolls students and generates profit.
Okay, so EON is betting on the success of the program alongside the university.
Precisely. Which leads to the third rule, 20% shared success. If the program is profitable, meaning it brings in revenue beyond costs, EON gets 20% of that profit.
20% of the profit. So in the U.S. example, if the program makes money, EON gets a slice. If it doesn't make money.
Then the university owes nothing more than that initial $50. The 9% credit is effectively written off. No success, no further payment.
The incentives seem totally aligned then. EON only makes significant money if the university makes money and delivers results.
Exactly. And they mention it's all automated through Stripe Connect, apparently, for transparent, real-time profit sharing. No complex accounting needed.
So the message to a university is pay $50. If it works, we share 20% of the profit. If it doesn't, walk away. That completely changes the game for adopting new tech.
It really does.
Yeah.
It removes the primary obstacle, the huge upfront investment, and the risk that it won't pay off.
And that lack of risk is what makes it globally scalable, right? Because that 1-9-20 logic holds even if the numbers change dramatically.
Absolutely. That's the elegance of it. The model flexes based on the local economy.
So we had the U.S. example, $50,000 equivalent tuition, $5,000 campus value, $50 upfront payment.
Right. Now contrast that with, say, Nigeria, where the tuition equivalent might be more like $1,500.
Okay, so 10% of $1,500 is $150 for the campus value.
And 1% of that, $150.
$1.50.
Exactly. $1.50 upfront for a university in Nigeria to get the exact same platform. The same AI courses, the same XR labs, the same potential.
Wow. $1.50 versus $50. That makes advanced educational technology accessible almost anywhere, instantly, without needing huge government grants or foreign loans.
That's the core idea. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this aims to turn education into infrastructure.
What do you mean by infrastructure exactly?
Well, think about how nations invest in roads or power grids. It's a foundational investment expected to yield broad economic returns. Traditional education is often treated like a consumer good bought by individuals, often with debt.
Right, volatile and dependent on individual finances.
But this impact share model, tied to KPI outcomes, lets institutions or even nations scale up quality education predictably, like an infrastructure upgrade. It becomes an investment with measurable returns, better skills, job placements, economic growth.
And it generates revenue for the university too, right? Without the usual risk.
Yeah.
The paper mentioned potential profits.
Yeah, they project that even a medium-sized campus scaling this up could generate significant new revenue streams, potentially millions, based on that tiny initial 1% investment purely from the shared success.
So it becomes a self-renewing system. Better learning efficiency leads to better outcomes, which drives revenue, which funds more access.
That's the loop. Education stops being just a cost center on the budget and becomes a verified engine for productivity and growth.
Okay, so wrapping this deep dive up, we have the EON virtual campus delivering the content via AI and XR. We have KTE as the metric, proving it works, aiming for that 0.85 or higher efficiency.
Meaning much less wasted time and money, much more actual competence.
And then ImpactShare, the 1-9-20 model, providing the zero-risk way to actually implement it all.
It shifts the focus from just getting through a course to verifiable competence and opportunity, replacing student debt with actual, measurable skills and income potential.
Which leads to a pretty fundamental question, doesn't it?
I think so. You know, if a university's financial success becomes directly, automatically tied to how well its students actually learn and then earn, tied to that KTE metric, What does that do to the wider economy?
Mm.
How does everything change when the most valuable asset isn't just capital anymore, but the provable, measurable knowledge and skills of every single student?
A shift from focusing on cost and time served to competence and real-world value. Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive.